All right, guys. So our final project is to build, I want to say a clone of Reddit, but this freaks out students in the past when I say a clone of Reddit because they think I mean the styling, which let me emphasize right away. The styling is a bonus. You could get full credit on this application with very minimal styling. With that being said, the functionality of Reddit we do need to clone. So if I'm hoping, or who's used Reddit before? Okay, great. If you're, I think there are only a couple, but if you're one of the couple who's never used Reddit, definitely spend some minutes creating an account and poking around. You can even use, we have a subreddit, which I'll show in a second. So you can even do a test post there. Yeah, but let's get into this. So a user is able to register. So I'm on the real Reddit right now. I'm going to just do login, choose an account. So password is hash. You learned from the pre-work that plain text passwords are bad, right? And so we're going to hash the password before storing it in the database. And then a JWT is going to be saved as a cookie, which we'll see all of this when we do the login routes, register routes. Yeah, and then logging out a JWT cookie is removed. Auth, we are going to completely build together. That's going to be this whole week, right? Okay, post. A user is able to create a post. You know what? Instead of using real Reddit, I'm going to switch to, so I gave you some previous student submissions for this project. So I'm going to actually switch to one of their submissions I have pulled up instead of using the real Reddit. So here I can log in. And I'm going to log in as Max123. Perhaps. So this unfortunately has to come out of cold storage because it hasn't been used in a while. Let's try registering, see if that works. Yeah, no, it needs to warm up, right? So maybe we will switch back to the real Reddit. So Hackmyhead has a subreddit, which we can use. So right here, I'll just say, keep username, it's fine. I'll say, hi, Hackmyhead, right? So every post has, for this project, is going to have a title and some text. Super bonus will be like images, and yeah, images. So I can submit a post. And then we see our submission. I can edit a post, right? Oh, I don't know in the real Reddit. Can we edit a post? Yeah. Edit. Oh, it doesn't let you edit the title, I guess. Hi, Hackmyhead. That's interesting. So you can't edit the title, but you can edit the message. On our Reddit, I think both you're going to be able to edit. So we'll click save. And we have 3 exclamation marks now too. So a different user is able to reply to a post. So here we can say good morning, right? And comment. Good morning. A user is able to upvote or downvote any post. And here I'm also calling comments posts. So there's no, like in Spammer, there were separate models. Here, there's no separate models. They're just all posts. So here I can, well, I've already liked this. So if I try to like it again, it removes my like, which you will have to do on your Reddit. And here I can downvote it or remove the downvote. And then subreddits. Let me see if the student one is working yet. Yeah, so I'm finally in. So here I can create a subreddit, and I'll call this one Hackmyhead, right? And now every subreddit has posts associated. Oh, Hackmyhead. And now when you're on a certain subreddit, you can see all the different posts, right? And you can vote. Each user only gets one vote on each post. So you can't keep spamming this.
What happens if you click downvote on, does it remove it, the upvote?
It removed it and made a downvote on this student submission. But on yours, you can do what you think is most intuitive or just copy Reddit exactly. But I would never take off points if this, the feature was a little different for this kind of small implementation. So that's all the specs, right? For full credit. So like I said, we're going to spend this week building this together. But what questions do you have out of the gate for this project? Okay. So what our goals for day one, right? This is kind of what I want to build together. At the top, I want links that say home. Home. Subreddits. So when you click on this, you see all the subreddits. Login, register, and log out, right? And then clicking on each one of these changes the URL at the top to be like /subreddits or /login. And for right now, I just want to see when we're on /login, I just want to see the word login. Or /subreddits, I want to see the word subreddits. But this is going to be routing, but not API routing like we learned. It's going to be kind of on routing on the front end, right? On the client side routing. So let's go ahead and bootstrap a new Next.js project. So npx create next app. So this I'm going to call Reddit clone. I'm going to use the defaults we've always been using. Okay, I'm going to cd into Reddit clone. I'm going to open up that. And I'm going to run this. And I'm going to clear out all the junk, right? So we can delete this favicon. We can delete all this. delete this. I think we're good there. Whoops. We can delete these two images. And then we need to delete all the styling, right? And we're good. We have a blank Next.js app. So, I guess first let's work on what we're going to call the nav bar, right? So the nav bar is a little bit unique. No matter what our path is, I want the nav bar to always show up. So if there's a certain component, we want to always show up regardless of the current URL route or path, right? How do we do this in Next.js? How do we do this in Next.js? Because the way Next.js functions in default, let's actually say /subreddits. When I hit /subreddits, I want a component to show up. So we'll actually make in my source directory, I'll make a new folder of components. And I'll make one called subreddits. And, well, let me turn it to you guys, right? How can I make a new component, React component called subreddits that just returns the word subreddits in a div? Ketzerin?
Export function subreddit return. You can do S1 subreddit or div. Yeah.
Yeah. And then right here, we just need to export default. Or I like to export default. I guess you don't have to. Okay. Now when the path is at /subreddits, I want this component to be visible. Oh, you know what? Actually, we don't. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me turn it to you guys, right? I think I made a little bit of a mistake, though, from where I wanted to go with the lecture. So, yeah. When the path is /subreddits, I want this component to show up. So instead of making it here, this component, where do I want to bring it? Or how do I want to modify this application to get that functionality?
Do you want to create a folder in the app folder?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So I want to create a folder. What do I name it?
Subreddits.
Yeah. And then in here, now I need to create what file?
Subreddit.
Page.js.
No, it has to be called page.jsx. And this is per Next.js. And then I'm going to actually cut this and paste this into here. And I'm going to delete this subreddit because we don't need it right now. So this is called folder-based routing, right? Because we named a folder subreddits, when we go to this path of subreddits, it's going to look for page.jsx to render. What did I do wrong? Subreddits.
Save it.
Does it have to be called page? No. Oh, yeah? Subreddits. Oh, no. Huh. Okay. Sometimes just turning it off and on, right? Clears the errors. But while I'm doing that, let me open up the console. Yeah, so folder-based routing, right? And this is very similar to the API that we used before. But in this case, we're showing and hiding components based on the path. So we named our folder subreddits, and now this component will show up in page.jsx, right? But if I go to this path, just the blank path, what do you think? Will we see the word subreddits or not, Calypso?
No, you're gonna see what's ever on the original page.js
Yeah.
folder.
So this page.js will be rendered instead. But now I want to make a component which, regardless of the path, or let me do one more of these to drill home the pattern. So now when we go to /login, I want to see the word login. I want to see the word login. How can I start working on that, Ritu? /login, I want to see the word login. Just like we have /subreddits, I see the word subreddits.
So you want to go to the app directory.
Yeah.
And then create a folder in the app directory called login.
Yep.
And then you can call it login. And then within the login folder, create a file page.jsx.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll change this to be login and this to be login, future login, right? And when I go to login, now login shows up inside of subreddits doesn't. The thing is, at the top here, I want links to be able to go to these different paths. So I'm going to make a component called navbar. And the thing about this component is I want this component to show up regardless of the path. In other words, I want it to show up always for every path. How can I accomplish that in Next.js?
You import it.
Into where?
In the page.js.
This one?
In the layout.
Yeah.
The
So
layout, you're gonna put the nav bar in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a special file called the layout that's, unlike pages, is always going to be rendered, right? So in layout, if we want a component to always show up, this is the file that enables that. So in here, we can import our navbar. And now navbar will always show up regardless of the path, right? Questions on that? All right.
So in line
Yeah.
17, is that gonna be, is that telling the page that the nav bar is gonna be above children, which I'm assuming is the rest of the or am I getting ahead? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So the navbar is going to be ahead of all the other content on the page. Namely, on the /subreddits path, what is children?
The subreddit page?
Yeah. This component is going to be the children. And if this had, children of its own, they would all be nested in there. Yeah. But if the path is /login, then which component is the child now for this layout?
The login page.
Login.
Yeah, this component here now is the child. Yep. Okay, but now for the navbar, I want actual links. So when I click home, I want to go to /. When I click subreddits, /subreddits, login, /login, and likewise, right? For all of them. So going to my navbar, how can I make links that when you click on them will change the path?
Get the link.
Yeah. So there's a special link tag, Why isn't it auto importing for me? Link navbar.jsx. I don't know why the auto import isn't working. Yeah, that's annoying. Next.js link. So anyway, link. So to use it for our first one, home, I want this to take me to home, but we have one required attribute of href. So in here, I can just put slash. So when I click on home, take me to slash, right? So now clicking on home, we're at slash login right now. But when I click home, takes me to slash. And then likewise, I can do this for subreddits, login, register, logout. So subreddits, login, register, and logout. Let's get a little space between these though. How can I do that? So a styling question, right? Zubida, any ideas how I can get some spacing in between my links here? Zubida?
No idea, but I think we can maybe get an element so that we target it in the global CSS.
Okay.
Like div class.
Yeah, put a class here?
Yeah.
Sure. What's a good name?
What name? Navbar. We've already have
Sure.
this Navbar.
Navbar. Yeah. Okay, and then global CSS, which I do.
Dot Navbar. Then
Padding? Okay.
not certain. Or margin. We can use padding or margin.
Padding. All right, not quite what we wanted, but getting close. Yeah, we just want some space in between the links. Maybe a gap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's do turn it into a flex box and just give a gap of 5 pixels. 10 pixels. Yeah. So now clicking on these, we don't have components for register and log out. So we can quickly do that, right? So I'll make this register. Uh-oh. Something is not happy with me. Yeah, it's like frozen up or something. Hopefully that'll clear.
Hey Max, is there any reason not to use like user lists with the list for the links, or is div just fine?
User list?
Yeah.
For what?
For the links of the navbar?
Oh. Well, I'm not sure what you mean by using links as a tag, as a selector. You mean?
Yeah.
Because you might have other
because
links.
We have it in a div. We have it in a div, and usually links are in like a user list kind of thing. Yeah, unordered list.
Okay, so right here you're talking about?
Yeah, you see you have it as a div. Usually, these kind of things are in a unordered list. It doesn't matter.
Oh, that's just styling. Yeah, that doesn't. If you like doing it that way, that's fine. Yeah, that's just completely styling. Yeah. Okay, so I was changing the name of this to register, I thought. Oh my God, what is going on? Does not like this. All right, let me try to exit again. Let me just delete this because it's a problem. All right, let me try to copy this again and rename this to register. There we go. And change this to register and this to register. And then I need just one more for logout. Logout. All right, now all these links presumably should work. Let's test them out, right? So home takes us to slash, where we just have hi. That works. Subreddits, login, register, logout. Awesome. So we have a basic skeleton of our app already in place. Any questions on routing?
When you do link, is it advisable to use an anchor tag inside the link?
No. Yeah, you want to use Next.js specific component. If you use just a naked anchor tag, it's not going to, do all the things that Next.js needs. And it might hard refresh the page. Yeah. So you definitely want to use link. Unless you're going to an outside link, like google.com or something, then you'd want to use an anchor tag.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? Okay, so this is my recommendation for when you start building the app, what you do first. Just this basic routing with these components, your nav bar, and some of the basic routing. The next thing I think you should work on is the authentication routes, right? So I think the next stop we should do is this register route. But before we hit that, I want to talk about authentication, basically our flow. So we have the client and the server, right, in this Next.js app. And this is how does a user register? This is going to be describing this path. So the client has to send a request to the server. And the route they're going to hit is going to be API/users/register. And what information do they have to send the server, do we think? So here's the path they're going to hit. But what do they need in the body? What does the server need in the body to process a registration of a user?
Username and password.
Yeah, so they're going to need username and password in the body. And then steps the server takes when it receives this request. So what do we think the server needs to do when it receives this request? What are some of the things it needs to do to register a user?
To store it.
Yeah. Needs to create the user in the database. Absolutely, yeah.
Should it check to see that it's a unique user?
Yeah. So before creating, should check to see if the user already exists. Create the user in the database. But before creating the user in the database, it really should hash the password that the user submits or provides. Anything else you think the server has to do to process a registration request for a user?
Does it have to create a JSON Web Token?
Yeah. Needs to create a JWT. That's exactly right. And finally, what does it have to do?
Does it log the user in so they can use the website, or?
That brings up a good question. What does it mean to be logged in our Reddit clone? Does anyone have a guess? What would that even mean? Like, what state of the application, what would exist or not exist for it to be logged in, your application currently?
It would allow them to interact with it if they're logged in? Like they can't create posts maybe if they're not logged in, or comment?
So that's what they're allowed to do if they're logged in, but what determines if they're logged in?
Is it the permissions that you give?
That's all just determined on if they're logged in and what they're allowed to do. But so in our application, what the mental model I want you to have for is logged in, is there a valid cookie stored? Is there a valid JWT token stored in the client's cookies? So you guys have heard of cookies, right? A bunch. Any idea what a cookie is?
Doesn't it like store information about
Yeah.
a website?
Yeah, little pieces of key and value text that we as the developer can store on a client's computer. And then on every request, the client sends the cookie automatically. So step 5 is we send the response with the JWT and the cookie setting header. So then when the client receives this request, the browser will automatically store the cookie. So a lot going on on this registration request, right?
So if someone clears out their cookies on their computer, like would the server need to create a new JWT?
Yep.
Or that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But they wouldn't need to create a new username or user object. Yeah, but you wouldn't be logged in anymore. So let's start. We could attack this problem either client or server. And the crazy thing about this Reddit project is I'm not telling you which to start on, front end or back end. When I develop, just I go back and forth, honestly. That's my style. But you could completely do, it would probably be very hard to do the front end entirely first, but you absolutely could do the back end entirely first before even touching the front end. But I leave it up to you how you want to attack this exactly, right? But for lecture, we are going to start on the client side of this problem. So what do we need to do so that the client can send this request to the server? What do we need to build so that the client is able to send this request.
We need to build a form.
Yes. So in register here, we need to build a form. So let's go ahead and knock this out, and this will be the last thing we do for lecture today. So, how do we start working on this form? What are the two pieces of information we need to send to the client, right? Username and password. So how can I collect these from the client in a form? Pimpa? How can I start working on this form?
We create input.
Yeah. Input. And any attributes for input?
Type.
What?
Text. On change.
Yeah, eventually we will need an on change. And what function should fire for an on change? Or maybe it's helpful to start. What pieces of state do we need for this register component?
Use state. Con user.
Yeah, we're going to do username and set username, right? That's our first piece of state. What should the default value be?
Empty.
Empty string, yep. And then what's our another piece of state?
Locked in.
No, so we just need username and password to send to the server.
Password.
Yeah. So here we'll do password and set password. Yeah, okay. And now back to here, how do we have to work on this input? Ellery, what are some steps we need to do?
Okay, so we need a value. So for the username, okay, so the value for username is username in curly braces. Placeholder. You can do a placeholder username. And that's for now. I think that's okay. We're gonna do the on change. You can do a callback function. So we can target E, the event listener E. And then we're using set username and taking in event.target.value.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm going to copy this one for, what are we doing here? For password, right? Wow, this is slow today. Oh, because I have an error. What is my error? Use state is not defined. Yeah.
Import use state.
Yeah, I'm going to auto import it.
And you have use client.
Yeah, so we have to make this a client component because we're using interactions with the client. And then finally, what do I need in this form?
Submit button.
Yeah. And this I'll call actually register. And now when I click on register, I want to see in the console log username and password, and then we'll call it there for the day. So how can I do that? When I click register, I want to see the username and password in the console. David?
You click register. So then we need a handler for the button.
Not the button. We
No,
could,
I'm
but
sorry. The
yeah.
form needs an attribute of on submit.
Yep. Whoops.
And then so on submit, you want to see the username and password. So
let's define this outside though. So what's a good name for this function that should be called?
Um, submit, handle, submit,
Handle
button.
register, I'm going to call it.
Or handle register. Yeah.
So function handle register. And then here we'll point that to here. And then I said I just want a console.log username, password to know that it's working. But what else do we have to do, David, to prevent that flashing?
Prevent the default. So prevent default, e.prevent default parentheses.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to call it there for lecture. Yeah. Any questions on that?
Do you want to put a type attribute to password, especially like type password or something?
Oh, yeah, I definitely do. So here, if we do type equals password, it will now hide it. Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Other questions?
Will we have to add, like, what if the user forgot the password? Will we have to add?
Oh,
that
that's
into
it.
this
That's going to be a bonus. Yeah, that's definitely beyond the normal specs. Yeah, that actually requires way more than, or I don't know how much you're thinking, but you have to send emails, and that's a whole thing. That's a good bonus, though.
Do you want us to make the password like can they do a simple password just like password, or should it be something that's like, contains like numbers and special characters and stuff like that?
We're going to end up hashing the password, so, but you don't need a requirement beyond that.
Okay.
Unless you want. That's a bonus again, not in the specs. All right, so if you just kind of remind yourself what Reddit is today, framework out the app like we have in lecture with these routes, and then maybe start thinking about your models, like your Prisma schema. That'd be a great place to be today. So what I don't want you to do is go to Reddit and just start freaking out about the styling. Like, I had students last cohort be like, I don't know how to do this modal. And like losing his mind because he didn't know how to do this modal. Like, that's such a stretch goal. It's ridiculous, right? So forget that the styling kind of exists and just focus on the functionality. Creating posts, liking posts, upvoting posts, downvoting posts, that kind of stuff, right? So any questions on that?
How long is this project for? Like, when is this due?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay.
Yeah.
And for the user, the only info you're asking for is username and password, and that's it. We're not asking for like their email and their name and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the specs, it's just username and password. Yeah. Oh, I don't think I definitely want to bring your attention to this part of the specs we didn't talk about. So let me move you guys over. So I have docs. Here are kind of like the very minimum routes that your application needs to support. And your endpoints, these paths, and these responses has to match exactly. So these are very strict requirements. So your application has to have this endpoint and it has to respond in this manner. So here's a request to log in, and this is the response your application needs to send exactly. Here's a request to update a post. But this is the exact response I need to see. You are going to have to do more endpoints than this, but these endpoints have to match exactly. Okay? So here's a request to create a new subreddit So all they need is the name. And here's the response.
So
we-
we're just using this as like a framework and creating the API in our stuff like last time, right?
Yeah, so this is like the source of truth for you as the backend developer. You receive this from your team leader or whoever, your boss, and you are stuck using this exact pattern. So you have to make your schema in Prisma to match these docs. So we all
So this week,
yeah.
we're doing font in first, or is up to us? We can start with the back end, or
It's up to you.
okay.
But I would just mirror what we do in lecture, honestly. So a little bit of both. Well, we haven't touched the back end yet, so yeah.
And we're connected with Neon, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Hey,
all right.
Max, really quick.
Yeah.
Are we having class on Monday or administratively? What?
Oh,
class?
is Monday the 25th?
Yeah.
Yeah, no class. So Christmas.
Okay.
Our one holiday, and then no more holidays. So we are here New Year's Day. Okay. All right, let me get breakout rooms going.